There are rumours of a very interesting new Formula race car coming in 2026. It supposedly has 800 horsepower, active aero and all-wheel drive. And that sounds great, doesn't it? The only thing is they don't make too much noise because they're electric. Now, we all love a big V10. But using electric motors allows for some genius engineering. So, what series is this? Well, it's what I've heard about the Gen 4 Formula E car, and it should bring the championship, once known for needing car changes mid-race, significantly closer to F1 speeds. I recently went to Monaco to speak with the teams and drivers to talk about where Formula E might be heading, how the tech is making such big steps forward, and whether getting to Formula 1 speeds is actually the goal for Formula E.
At the moment we are evolving a 5% rate per year. So if you think about 5% compounded over the next 10-15 years, you're going to have plenty of energy.
Formula E has seen massive developments in its cars over the 10 years the series has run. Gen 1 was 330 horsepower, Gen 2 was 400 horsepower, and the current car, Gen 3, is 470 horsepower. And percentage-wise, they're massive steps forward. So far, all the cars have been rear-wheel drive, but their next car, the Gen 3 Evo, will also drive the front axle at points during the race, meaning that the Gen 3 Evo is the fastest accelerating Formula car in the world right now, doing 0 to 60 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds. But it's not just about the horsepower, it's the efficiency of the power usage that's actually most impressive. The Gen 3 car is actually 15 times more efficient than a Formula 1 car.
In some circuits we do up to 180 miles an hour, so the equivalent of less than 5 litres of fuel. For an equivalent ICE engine car for that race distance, that time, you'd probably be around 30 to 40 litres of fuel.
Now, I know some of you might roll your eyes at race cars being efficient, but it is important, not just for saving the planet, but also for faster and more nimble race cars. Because the more energy you can put back into the battery under braking, the smaller and lighter the battery pack can be. And look, even though the Gen 3 Evo is going to be up to 2 seconds quicker than the current car, thanks to all-wheel drive, improved aero and stickier tyres, it still won't be close to the pace of an F1 car over a single lap. But each generation of Formula E is making a huge step forwards, which leads me on to the Gen 4 cars, and that's where things get really interesting. I've heard that this car is going to be very different from traditional Formula cars, with four-wheel drive, movable aerodynamic parts and improved weight distribution. And because the car uses electric motors, it would, in theory, be possible to have an individual motor on each wheel. So first, what's individual wheel drive and why is it important? Well, it's something we've actually covered in our video about the AMZ Racing Formula Student car that accelerated to 60 miles per hour in less than a second. The AMZ team added an individual electric motor to each wheel of the car to help improve grip levels. But Formula E driver Lucas Di Grassi thinks the series might take it a step further.
My view of a future Formula E car is that the whole car is controlled by software. It means you have one motor per wheel, you have four-wheel drive independently and four-wheel steering. So you can steer with the four wheels as well.
And if that was the case, you can imagine how creative engineers might get. I just love the fact they'll be working on challenges not seen before in motorsport, as always to make a race car lap as fast as possible. In the case of the Formula Student cars, the motors are tiny, less than 3 kilograms, and they sit inside the wheel hub. Now, it's not confirmed that Formula E will definitely use individual wheel drive, but having individual control of each wheel and the torque you can put through it is interesting, and will make the cars quicker. Just think about this, when a car enters a turn, the inner wheels follow a tighter and shorter path, while the outer wheels take a wider and longer path. And because of the difference in the distance covered, the inner and outer tyres must rotate at different speeds, so the tyres don't lose traction. And that's where differentials come in. It allows inner and outer wheels to rotate at different speeds while receiving power from the engine. And how the diff is set up really makes a difference to how a race car handles. You see Formula 1 drivers changing diff settings all the time, sometimes even between corners. And what they're doing here is changing the balance of the car, trying to remove any unwanted understeer or oversteer at different points through the corner. But with an electric motor on each wheel, the car doesn't need a diff, and it has a ton of benefits. First, just think about when a race car is being driven through a corner. You get something called load transfer. For example, when a car brakes, the load moves forward and the front tyres are pushed into the racetrack even harder, therefore producing more grip. And it's not just under braking, load moves around each tyre throughout the corner. So basically the grip of each individual tyre is constantly changing. So when the driver hits the accelerator pedal in a traditional race car, they won't be using all of the grip of all of the tyres all of the way through the corner. It's just impossible. But with individual drive and torque vectoring, that's going to be a possibility. The car's computer will know when the tyre has more grip, and if the driver is pressing the accelerator, more torque will be sent to that tyre. And that will make the car significantly quicker. And it doesn't just benefit when adding power. The electric motors can be adjusted incredibly quickly, so they could be used for traction and stability control, reducing torque if the tyre is being pushed over its limit and begins to slide. Okay, so all of that sounds cool, but what's even more interesting about the Gen 4 car is the potential use of active aero. But when I spoke to Lucas Di Grassi, he mentioned how active aero might work.
We have active movable aerodynamics that you can control with the computer corner by corner. And by having that setup, you can literally add downforce or reduce downforce with the change of code. You change how the wings are positioned and you change the downforce of the car.
And this comes back to Formula E's focus on efficiency, because if they did want to make cars faster in the corners up to F1 speeds, the cars would definitely need more downforce. However, adding more downforce will increase drag, and it's not linear. In fact, drag squares with speed, meaning that if you double the speed, drag actually quadruples. That means that cars with a lot of downforce like F1 cars need so much more power and need so much more energy to push themselves through the air. Unless of course the car can shed that weight when the downforce isn't required, like on the straights and less sharp corners. Active aero is actually something we already see on road cars like the Ferrari LaFerrari, the McLaren Senna, the AMG 1, and of course a limited version in F1 with DRS. However, I'm hoping that Formula E is going to allow all the wings to be active and allow different angles depending on the circuit or even each corner. And that's fascinating because it'll be a completely new kind of challenge for engineers. Just imagine trying to figure out how to change wing angle corner by corner while considering all of the other effects it'll have on the car. So with more power, torque vectoring and active aero, it is possible that Gen 4 cars could be significantly closer to F1 lap times. But is that really the goal for Formula E? Are they actually chasing F1 lap times? Well, I spoke to Jaguar TCS team principal James Barclay to find out.
So formally, we don't look at Formula 1 lap time being an important benchmark. We've already proved that electric cars can go faster than anything. I mean, Volkswagen's IDR broke the lap record at Goodwood and in other places, right? So we know that actually if we want to, over short runs, we can make these cars even faster. That's actually not the priority. So what we want to have is the right level of technology and the right performance, but what we don't want to do is also compromise the racing.
And that's an important point. Make the cars faster and you run the risk of making the actual wheel-to-wheel racing worse. Just take a look at how F1 or even F2 can sometimes be. And there are a number of reasons for this. First, faster race cars come by adding more grip, usually through downforce. And the more downforce you add, the more the air is being disrupted, meaning it's less effective on the following car. We see that all the time in racing, and as a driver, when you fall into that hole of what feels like zero grip, it's one of the most annoying parts of racing. Second, faster race cars usually mean shorter braking distances, because they have more grip. And shorter braking distances means less time and less opportunity to send one up the inside. And third, with more power and more grip, cars naturally spread out more on the exit of a corner. The car in front is always going to be able to get on the throttle sooner than the car following, by at least a car's length. But when cars can accelerate faster, this distance actually stretches out, again making it harder to overtake on the following straight or at the next corner.
In motorsport, as we know, there's a careful balance. If you make the cars incredibly fast, if you make braking efficiency amazing, you actually reduce overtaking. And one of the things we have in Formula E, which is super exciting, is incredible racing.
And really, that's one of the big reasons that I like Formula E. The racing is close and the results are unpredictable. So I think it's going to be a fine balance of managing to make the cars faster while keeping loads of overtaking. and also visibly seeing the cars move around, which as a driver I love to see. And as a fan of all motorsport, it's been really interesting to see what Formula E has managed in the past 10 years, and where they're going with the Gen 3 Evo and the Gen 4 cars. But what's most interesting to me is that they seem to be looking at racing with a clean sheet of paper. They're happy to try different ways of producing fast, challenging and entertaining races. And I think this was echoed really well by James Barclay.
We want to go faster, we want to showcase the performance these cars can do. We want to make sure we have the right technology in the cars that's beneficial to manufacturers like us to use Formula as a test bed. But importantly, the heart of it, we want to make sure we maintain really exciting racing.
Now, with this close racing, Formula E drivers need to be very aggressive, as you might have seen. To find out how they go about this, check out this video just here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.